Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, please subscribe. I'd really love that. If you're returning, how you doing? Remember just a few days ago, and it started what, 2, 3 weeks ago, all the fog that we were having? Well, it reminded me of something that happened back in the 1950s. Okay. And I have some stuff that we're going to watch and some stuff that I'm going to read to you. Okay. But first, watch this, okay? And please pay attention because it seems like it's coming back around.
He authorized Sidney Gottlieb to spray germs into the fog in San Francisco harbor. The point was to try to infect 800,000 people in San Francisco with this germ just to see how many would get sick. And they thought that the germ would sit heavily in the fog and would linger in the air longer that way to infect more people. Now remember, nobody knew that this was happening. And I don't mean just nobody in San Francisco. I mean nobody. The CIA director didn't know it was happening. The president didn't know it was happening. This was Alan Dulles and Dr. Sidney Gottlieb. So what happened? They spray this poison into the air, and 11 people got identical urinary tract infections within the next 3 days. Now, we know that these were specific to the germ because these urinary tract infections included bleeding, but with blood that had crystals in it. Doctors were so taken aback by the fact that this wasn't just a urinary tract infection, but these people were discharging crystals from their bodies that they actually got together in doctors' groups and talked about it. That what in the world is this? Is this some kind of a new disease? And then like magic, it just went away. And it went away because it was just a CIA experiment. In 1951, Alan Dulles becomes the director of the CIA, just like he planned to.
Now that you have seen just a little bit of it, okay? Now, this sea spray, okay? The U.S. Navy conducted this secret experiment in 1950, known as Operation Sea Spray, where they sprayed stuff, including, can't even pronounce it, it's Seratia, uh, and over the Bay of California, all right? The aim was to assess how much vulnerable large U.S. cities like San Francisco would be to an attack. Initially, the Navy believed that these bacteria were harmless to humans. Okay, but back in the 1950s, they didn't know what we know now. Okay, so I'll give them that. But after the experiment, 11 people were hospitalized with rare, like a UTI. Okay, now this Seratia, I know I'm not pronouncing it correctly, is a species of a gram-negative bacteria that can cause issues like meningitis. And it was long thought to be non-pathogenic, but it was found to be a human pathogen by the mid-1960s. It was found to be used in the experiment because of the distinctive red pigmentation, which made them easy to track. However, the experiment led to concerns and congressional hearings in the 1970s. So the Bacillus atrophaeus, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, on the other hand, is a soil bacterium that can be lethal to those of us that have compromised immune systems. And it is often used as a stimulant to bioterrorism preparedness exercises due to its similarity in the Bacillus anthracis, the what do you want to call it? The agent of anthrax. Okay. Now, the San Francisco incident. Um, it, like I said, it was in order to determine how vulnerable a large city like San Francisco, may be to an attack. So I'm wondering if they wanted to start with San Francisco and then go bigger and better. You know what I mean? Like, then go to New York, then go to Tampa, then go to Houston, go to, you know what I'm saying? Um, so watch this and tell me what you think.
In the early years of the Cold War, many Americans, and Dietrich workers in particular, feared the worst from the Soviets.
We felt very strongly that the Soviet Union had a very strong program in biological warfare, and that we were putting our lives at risk to work with all these nasty organisms.
The U.S. military concluded it had to make plans, despite not knowing if the Soviets really had germ weapons.
If they do you need them yourself? If you had no nuclear weapons, I think the decision would have been we'd better have a biological capability. And we would be in bad shape if we found out that they did and had nothing of that sort ourselves.
Because the U.S. still had few nuclear bombs, germ weapons got a boost.
The biological weapons program was able to step up and at least claim that it could provide a weapon of mass destruction that would augment the atomic arsenal.
With the American biological warfare program ramping up, Dietrich researchers had high hopes for the human data from Japan. They were deeply disappointed.
It turned out that Shiro Ishii was not the kind of scientist they wanted. What they wanted was a scientist who would tell them how many airborne bacteria would infect people a half a mile downwind. There was nothing like this in the Japanese documents.
The U.S. had let war criminals go free in exchange for junk science. American bioweapons researchers now came to a sobering realization. If they wanted reliable human data, they would have to get it themselves. On a sticky August day in 1949, technicians from Dietrich visited the Pentagon on a secret mission. Disguised as maintenance workers, they used simulants, non-infectious bacteria, to assess the vulnerability of people inside large buildings to attack. Only a few of the Pentagon's employees were aware of the test. A technical success, the Pentagon trial revealed the threat and promise of germs for sabotage. But the American biological program had ambitions beyond workers in buildings.
The characteristic of biological weapons is the ability to cover very large areas with wind-borne disease organisms. Automatically, that tells you that if there is any utility to biological weapons, it lies in the attack of civilians.
This is a great change in notions of conducting war, waging war in the 20th century. You have to start thinking of the enemy civilian as aiding and abetting the enemy, as part and parcel of the aggression that you're trying to overcome. So your victory may depend greatly on the killing of civilians.
Series of tests were done on American cities. There was still some doubt that biological weapons could be effective against a target the size of a city.
An early trial took place in San Francisco in September 1950. Outside the Golden Gate Bridge, a Navy ship sailed a carefully charted course. It released a plume of simulant bacteria that dispersed like anthrax germs. If the test had been real, most of San Francisco's 800,000 residents would have been exposed to anthrax. A large number would have been infected. Three years later, as the Cold War raged on, American planners took their secret exercises into the American heartland. In St. Louis and Minneapolis, two cities thought to resemble potential Soviet targets, sprayers hidden in cars dispersed invisible clouds of simulants. U.S. citizens knew almost nothing about the American germ program, nor did most of their representatives in Washington. Every year, the House Appropriations Committee approved biowarfare spending within the defense budget. In closed meetings, only a few selected congressmen were briefed on the details. What the American public was told was how to respond to a biological attack.
Biological warfare? What do they expect me to do about it? It's not my headache.
You're wrong. You had better find out the facts about biological warfare, or BW.
There's a new poison. 1 ounce can kill all the people in the United States.
Germ warfare can wipe out an entire city.
In a period of escalating Cold War tensions, Americans were encouraged by their government to prepare for a germ assault by a ruthless Soviet enemy thousands of miles away. Few were aware of what the U.S. had already done within its own borders. Fewer still knew what was coming next.
Now, did you know that based on the results from monitoring equipment at 43 locations around the city of San Francisco, the Army determined that San Francisco had received enough of a dose for nearly all of the city's 800,000 residents. And this was, like I said, from September 20th to the 27th in 1950, okay, to inhale at least 5,000 of these particles. And there were multiple perishments and other related illnesses as a result of these experiments. So the conclusive results of these experiments are largely unknown. Still, to this day, they're unknown. And the experiment itself wouldn't be discovered until the Senate subcommittee hearing in 1977, where the Army also revealed other pathogens such as the Serratia, zinc cadmium sulfide, Bacillus globigli, Bacillus subtilis were intentionally released in various American cities such as Key West, Panama City, New York City, the state of Minnesota, Washington, D.C., as well as Pennsylvania, all with varying degrees of damage and under the direction of the U.S. military. How scary. How scary is that? And they did this all as an experiment to see if we would survive. Now, my question is did they have something for those of us that were affected? You know, I'm guessing not. Did they have something to those of us that were affected? Like, not a serum, because that wouldn't, but, saying, oh, look what we did, that type of thing. Or was this a form of Depop? Just a question. Yeah. Sick to even think that way. But, back in the 1950s, did they have these thoughts like they do today? I don't know. It's just, you know, I didn't even think that these things even happened back then. But then again, I wasn't alive in the 50s. I didn't come along until 1976. So, but I'm sure things were happening in the 70s as well. But I was just a kid, so what the hell do I know? You know what I mean? But anyway, all right, guys, I'm out of here. Okay, I'll see you in the next one. You stay safe, you stay positive, you keep prepping, and as always, fearless. Ciao.